The dog barely stirred when the kids laughed. Gray around the muzzle, one ear torn, a limp in his right leg. He looked more ghost than guardian. His nameplate read Rex, but the shelter staff called him Rusty. On stormy nights, he barked in his sleep, chasing memories no one asked about. Forgotten medals gathered dust in a plastic bin beside his cage. That Tuesday afternoon, while the rain battered the shelter's tin roof, a man in a faded Marine Corps jacket walked in. He didn't ask to adopt. He just looked at Rex, clicked his heels, and saluted. The storm passed quickly, but it left the parking lot flooded and the air sharp with ozone. The man didn't seem to notice. He stood beneath the awning, boots soaked, hands still resting on his brow long after the salute ended. His eyes didn't move from the dog. Inside the shelter, Lexi Monroe, the youngest on staff, watched from behind the plexiglass door. She hesitated before stepping out, tugging her cardigan tighter around her. The man was tall but hollow-looking, like he hadn't eaten in a few days and hadn't cared. His eyes were pale but not empty. Haunted. "You all right, sir?" Lexi called over the rain. He blinked once. "That K-9. What's his service record?" She blinked, startled. People usually asked if Rex could fetch or sit. Not for his record. I think there's some paperwork in the back. He's old. Came in 5 months ago from a shelter outside Claymont. No one's wanted him." She paused. "Why? You know him?" The man's jaw worked, but no words came. She led him inside. The shelter lights flickered once, the kind of bad wiring no one ever budgeted to fix. Rex lay in his corner, chin on paws, ribs just visible through his patchy fur. He didn't move, didn't even glance up. "He doesn't really get up for anyone anymore," Lexi offered softly. "He used to bark. Now he just watches the door, like he's waiting." "For what?" Lexi shook her head. "We don't know." The man walked closer, stopped just beyond the gate. "Rex." The dog's ears twitched. The man's voice dropped. "Sergeant Rex. Stand." And Rex, slowly, painfully rose. Not all the way, but enough. Enough to make the room hold its breath. Lexi handed the man the folder an hour later. He took it without a word and sat at the metal table in the break room, flipping pages with care. His knuckles were raw. When she offered coffee, he declined. The file wasn't long, but it was sharp. Explosives detection. 3 deployments. 2 confirmed saves. 1 Kia handler. Rex had been reassigned, but hadn't stuck. They noted behavioral instability and extreme grieving response. He'd bitten a superior. Discharged. Shuffled. Forgotten. "Why do you care?" Lexi asked finally. The man didn't look up. "He saved my life." That night, Lexi stayed late. The stranger hadn't adopted Rex. Hadn't even asked to, but he left a clean blanket, folded outside the kennel, and a silver metal no chain tucked between the gate bars. Rex sniffed it once, then curled beside it like it was a bone. Lexi tried to forget about it, but something itched in her chest. So, after closing, she called an old friend, Dylan Ray, a former K-9 officer who'd retired after his partner died in a house fire. Dylan didn't pick up, but she left a message. She asked if he knew a Rex, and a Marine with pale eyes and bad knees. She didn't expect an answer, but at 3:17 a.m., her phone rang, and Dylan said, "Don't trust him." The next morning, the man came back. Lexi met him at the door. "You're early." He shrugged. "Didn't sleep." She glanced down. His boots were dry now, but his eyes looked worse. Less haunted, more hunted. "Your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Tom." "That's your first name or your answer?" He gave the ghost of a smile. She handed him a clipboard. "You want to foster Rex? We have to run checks." "No checks," he said softly. Lexi folded her arms. "Then no dog." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then he gave a tight nod, took the clipboard, sat down. She watched him fill it out with mechanical precision. Tom Granger. 48, no current address. Just a P.O. box outside Willows Creek. Emergency contact? None. Lexi tapped her pen. You left this blank. He shrugged. Only people I know are buried. She didn't laugh. I called someone last night, a retired handler. He knew Rex, and he said not to trust you. Tom stopped writing. Lexi didn't flinch. Why would he say that? Tom stared down at the form. Then he folded it slowly and handed it back. I don't need to take him. I just wanted to see him again. You were his handler. Tom's knuckles went white. You're the Kia, she whispered. He didn't correct her. Later that day, Lexi sat on the bench by the kennel, watching Rex chew at his blanket. She looked up old articles. Nothing current, nothing local, but she found one from 8 years back. IED claims life of K9 handler in Kandahar. Dog missing in action. The article had a photo. A younger Tom Granger. Leaner, not as worn. Beside him sat Rex, proud, clean, ears tall. They'd been listed lost together. But somehow, only one of them was declared dead. Lexi's got twisted. She sent the article to Dylan. He texted back one word. Run. That night, the shelter's window was smashed. Rex didn't bark. He stood. Lexi arrived the next morning to find the front door unlocked, the lights off. One of the other volunteers, Sandy, sat on the floor of the office, crying. Did you see him? Lexi asked. Sandy shook her head. No, but someone took the logbooks and the backup drives and left this. She handed Lexi a small black phone. On it was a single photo, Rex tied to a tree, a shadow beside him. And beneath it, the message. He remembers more than he should. Lexi drove to Dylan's cabin that afternoon, past the cornfields and rusted trailers that stitched together the edge of Willows Creek. The sun was low, bleeding through the tree line in harsh reds. The cabin was dark, but she knocked anyway. Dylan opened the door halfway, shotgun in hand. You brought the dog? He asked. No, I came alone. He hesitated, then opened the door fully. Let her in. He's not dead, Lexi said. Tom Granger. He's alive. I know, Dylan said grimly. You said not to trust him. Why? Dylan sighed and poured 2 fingers of whiskey, sat across from her at the old kitchen table. There's things we were never supposed to know. Things the dog saw before we did. Rex was the best. Too good. He alerted on something inside our own camp. And then Granger went dark. He faked his death? No, he died. I saw the body. But 3 weeks later, someone using his ID checked out Rex. Off base. No paperwork. Lexi's hands trembled. You're saying... I'm saying someone used Rex. After Granger was gone. Used him to find something buried. That night, Lexi slept in her car outside the shelter. The phone buzzed again. A second photo. This time, Rex was alone. The tree behind him was split with bullet holes. And under it, tell it to stop, or he'll be next. Morning dragged its feet across the town of Willows Creek. The sun rose pale and muted, as if it didn't want to see what the night had done. Lexi stood in the backlit behind the shelter, where the gravel turned to mud and the trees pressed close. She stared at the photo again. Rex tied to a tree. Alone. Bullet holes in the bark. But Rex was back in his kennel this morning. Lying low, breathing slow. A scratch along his left flank. Fresh. Someone had brought him back while the rest of them slept. Or someone had never left. Lexi didn't tell the others. Not yet. She fed Rex with shaking hands and double-checked the locks. The security system had been fried. The backup camera was ripped clean out. There was no footage, just the phone and its threats. Rex didn't bark. But when she leaned close to check the scratch, he turned his muzzle and nudged her chest, gently, insistently, right over her heart. It felt like a warning. She called Dylan. I need to know what Rex found back then. Static. A long pause. Then come over. The cabin smelled like burnt coffee and dog hair, but Lexi barely noticed. Dylan's kitchen table was covered now. Old maps, printouts, satellite photos. A few had military stamps. A few were labeled in pen, F.O.B. Carter. May 2017. Unexplained secondary blast zone. K9 alerted here. Handler intervened. Lexi leaned over them. Why did no one report this? They tried. Reports vanished. Rex's footage was pulled from the collar cam. And then Tom died a week later. She looked up. But you said you saw the body. I saw a body, Dylan corrected. One burned beyond ID. But it had Granger's tags. His blood type. They closed it fast. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, tired. I think someone killed Granger and used his clearance to take Rex. Whatever that dog smelled back there, it wasn't Taliban. What was it? Dylan looked at her and said nothing, but the silence said it was American. They started digging, not in the ground, but in records. Lexi used her contacts at the shelter network to find out where Rex had been before he ended up in Claymont. Every shelter stamped a tag on the record chain. Only one tag was missing. No intake records between 2018 and 2023, she whispered. That's 5 years. Gap, that law means someone scrubbed it, Dylan said. But you can't erase all of it. He pointed to a partial file. See here, this vet report? He was treated for shrapnel. Clinic civilian. They have to keep backups. Lexi's heart jumped. It's dated 2020. Clinics in Ohio. Too far for stray. They looked at each other. Someone had been keeping Rex hidden. Injured. Maybe recovering. Maybe being used again. That night, Lexi sat alone in the shelter office, turning the photo of Rex over in her hands. She tried calling Tom again. No answer. No voicemail. But then the shelter phone rang. She picked it up, expecting a volunteer. The voice was gravel. Measured. You weren't supposed to look into this. Her throat dried. Who is this? You keep going. You're going to end up like your father. Silence. Her grip froze. What did you say? The line went dead. Lexi stared at the receiver. Her father had died in a car crash 17 years ago. Or at least, that's what she'd been told. But no one else should have known what was in that autopsy report. How the brakes had been tampered with. Or that he'd been a civilian contractor with the DOD. Lexi didn't sleep that night. She dug up her father's old files from the attic, dust covering the plastic crate like skin on a ghost. Inside were receipts, letters, photos. Most meant nothing, but one stuck out. A photo from 2016. Afghanistan. Her dad, younger, gray hair tied back, standing beside a familiar man in fatigues. Tom Granger. Behind them, a row of shipping containers marked redacted. And behind that, a dog crate. Lexi's stomach turned. Her father had known Granger. She brought the photo to Dylan. He stared at it like it was a curse. I remember those containers, he murmured. They weren't supposed to be there. Satellite tagged them as scrap, but they were sealed, guarded. By who? Not us. He stepped away, thinking hard. Your dad might have been part of the contractor cleanup. They used third-party teams to scrub black ops sites. They bring dogs and clear for traces, radiation, biochem, weapons. Lexi felt the pieces grind together like bone. Rex found something he wasn't supposed to. Dylan nodded. And your dad? He probably knew it wasn't an accident. That afternoon, the shelter got another visitor. Not Tom. A woman. Mid-50s, sunglasses, black blazer. Looked too polished for a town like Willows Creek. I'm with the Department of Defense, she said calmly. We've received word you're harboring a classified military asset. Lexi stiffened. This is a dog shelter. She showed a badge. Where is Rex? I don't know what you're talking about. The woman didn't press. She only smiled. If he's here, I suggest you return him. There are protocols for decommissioned K9S. Decommissioned? The woman's smile sharpened. You think he's just a dog? And then she left. Lexi rushed to the kennels. Rex was gone. The gate open. No signs of struggle. Just a faint trail in the dirt. Paw prints. And boot prints. Heading west. Toward the tree line. Dylan and Lexi followed them at dusk. Flashlights muted under red filters. The air was thick with insects and silence. Trees leaned in, whispering things only the dark could hear. Then they found the collar. Rex's, torn and bloody, hanging from a branch like a warning. Lexi's knees buckled. They took him. Dylan scanned the ground. No, they wanted us to see this. Wanted us to stop here. But they didn't. They kept going until they found a clearing. An old fire pit, burned recently. Papers, boxes, ash. And in the ash, part of a metal tag. Not Rex's. Granger. T. Lexi stared at it, breath frozen. Dylan crouched beside her. They burned the proof. Every trace. No, she whispered, because something moved behind them. Rex. He stumbled into the firelight, limping badly, for blackened with soot, but alive, and clutched in his teeth a piece of torn military canvas, marked with the insignia of a private defense contractor, her father's old employer. That night, they didn't go home. They took Rex to Dylan's cabin, wrapped his wounds. Lexi sat beside the dog and let him lay his head on her lap, his breathing shallow but steady. Dylan cracked a beer and stared at the map on the wall. They buried something. Whatever it was, it's not just old. Lexi didn't speak. She only reached into her bag and pulled out the last photo she'd found in the attic. It showed her father with another man, blurred, face partially obscured. But the jawline, it matched the woman from the shelter. Almost perfectly. A daughter, maybe, or a clone of a secret passed down. And scrawled on the back, in her father's handwriting, "If Rex barks, run." It rained again that night. The kind of slow, whispering rain that soaks the bones but leaves the ground too quiet. Inside Dylan's cabin, the wood stove crackled softly. Lexi sat cross-legged beside Rex, her palm resting gently over the bandage on his flank. The dog's chest rose and fell in shallow, careful rhythm. Each breath felt like a question. Outside, the forest listened. Inside, the past clawed at the walls. Dylan set down 2 steaming mugs on the table. "She's not Dodie," he said. "That badge? Fake. I ran the insignia. Belongs to an old Intel Shadow unit. Arclight. Private. Defunct on paper. Real behind closed doors." Lexi looked up, eyes heavy. They used Rex like a bloodhound for something illegal. Something they couldn't trust humans to find. Dylan nodded. Weapons, maybe. Toxins. Maybe worse. Lexi turned toward the fire. He found it, whatever it was, in that container. That's why they took him. That's why Tom died. "And your father," Dylan added quietly. Lexi's grip on the mug tightened. There was one option left. The original container site. Dylan had coordinates from an old satellite log. It had been bulldozed, paved over by a rural logistics hub, officially owned by a trucking company. Unofficially, it was guarded at night by men in unmarked trucks. "You sure about this?" Dylan asked as they geared up. "No," Lexi whispered. "But they keep coming back for Rex. They didn't erase him. They shelved him." Dylan loaded his shotgun. "Then let's blow the shelf off the wall." The drive took 2 hours through winding roads slick with rain. They parked a half-mile out and hiked the rest. Through a ditch, under barbed wire, across a drainage culvert. The lot buzzed with humming transformers and faint floodlights. Trucks sat parked in neat rows. Silent, the air tasted like copper. Lexi stopped behind a loading dock. Crouched beside Rex. The dog was alert now. Tail still, eyes forward. And then he moved, nose down, straight toward the gravel between 2 trucks. Lexi followed. There, beneath a warped metal panel, was a rusted hatch. Sealed, but the dirt around it was disturbed. Someone had opened it recently. They climbed down into the dark. Stale air, thick with mildew and rot. The walls were lined with old panels, scorched, broken. One door read, "Containment, Red Zone." It was open. Inside, rows of crates sat, most half empty. Stained, scorched, but in the far corner, one box was still sealed. Fresh lock, new tag. Specimen material, Class 4. Lexi reached for it, but Rex growled. Low and deep. She froze. Dylan pulled her back just as the air shifted. A soft click. "Tripwire," he muttered. "We're not the first ones down here." And from behind them, footsteps. The woman from the shelter stepped into the beam of the flashlight. No sunglasses now. Just cold, empty eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. Behind her, two men in tactical gear raised rifles. Lexi stepped in front of Rex. "You killed Tom Granger." "No," the woman said calmly. "We repurpose him, like we did the dog. You used him like a corpse in a uniform." He volunteered, in his own way, after the container, after he saw what we found. She smiled faintly. "You think it was a bomb?" "It wasn't. It was a warning, dug from the ground, not placed." Lexi blinked. "What are you saying?" The woman stepped forward. "Your father thought he was cleaning up military mistakes, but this wasn't ours. It was ancient. We found something we never should have uncovered, something older than language." Rex reacted to it. The crate behind her shuddered. A faint hiss. "Rex didn't just bark at it," she said. "He howled. He remembered." Lexi stared at her, shaking. "That's why you kept him alive. You wanted to know what he knew. And now we do. But the thing about memory, sometimes it's not his. It's past, imprinted, traced." The woman leveled the pistol at Rex. "He's too dangerous to keep breathing." But before she could pull the trigger, Rex lunged, faster than he should have, teeth bared, not at her, but past her, straight into the shadows. A second figure fell with a scream. Someone none of them had seen. Another man, a third guard, hidden, waiting. The chaos exploded. Dylan fired once, then twice. The room filled with smoke and ricochet and shouting. Lexi dragged Rex behind the crate as bullets tore through plastic and metal. The woman vanished, but the lock on the crate cracked, and inside there was no weapon, no chemical agent, just a sealed black orb, smooth, silent, thrumming like a heartbeat. Rex growled, low and long, and then he whimpered. They left the site burning. Dylan planted charges in the tunnel. Lexi carried Rex up the hatch, cradling him against her chest like a child. The facility collapsed in fire and earth. Some truths don't need to be buried. They need to be destroyed. Back in Willows Creek, the news reported an industrial accident. No casualties, no evidence, no names. Rex never barked again, but he stayed. Lexi adopted him quietly. Let him sleep on the rug beside her bed. Let him rest. Let the ghost dim. She never heard from the woman again, but sometimes when Rex dreamed, he'd let out a quiet cry, like he was remembering something that never belonged in a dog's mind, something not made of this world. A year later, on a spring morning soaked with sunlight, a stranger walked into the shelter. Older, beard, wounded eyes. He walked past the puppies, past the chatter, right to the far end, where Rex sat, and he saluted. Lexi watched from the desk. Rex rose slowly, limping, quiet, and walked to the gate. The man didn't adopt him, didn't speak. He just knelt, and Rex laid his head in his lap. Some bonds aren't about ownership. Some crimes never make it to court. Some stories don't end with justice. Just quiet. Lexi never tried to explain what she saw in that crate. Never told the world about the orb, or the agency, or what they'd done to that dog. But sometimes when the air turned cold and the wind came in wrong, she'd sit beside Rex and hold his metal and whisper, "You're not just a dog.